Welcome. Today, I'm a bench pilot. Feel like I should do my due gil- I feel like I feel like I should do my due gil- my Welcome, bench pilot gringo here. And today I want to talk about the Cabron, what the Cabron is, how it came to be, and so on and so forth. The Cabron was a passion project that I started back in late October, early November. Can't really remember. I just know in November we started actually working on the first original prototypes. The frame concept came from when I had a whole lot of tequila in my system, and I thought it would be a good idea to be like, you know what, let's create our own frame. It's about time. I want to take everything I liked from all the frames I've flown, just very limited, and then just kind of mesh them into one frame, one cohesive frame. So that way in my little pea brain, I feel like I can get better at flying. The frame started when I was drinking tequila at a local Mexican restaurant with Venus. And at the time, I was sponsored, and still technically am sponsored by Damage, but I haven't flown any of their frames because I've been so focused on this passion project, which is the El Cabron. After a few shots of tequila, I was like, you know what? I'm going to message Damage and see if we could talk about maybe coming up with the frame, because I love the Elmatic, but it's Squash X, and I felt like it was kind of hindering in some aspects. Squash X just does fly a little bit differently. It's really good at yeeting and, kind of a flowy style, but I'm a very snappy person. I need more equal distribution on thrust, hence True X. Damage was gung-ho, and originally we were going to work on that, but Damage is currently working on a 5-inch racing frame with Nightwing, which I completely understand. So TKS reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm a machinist. I can create step files so that way we can actually cut out the frames and prototype it and stuff. So I took him up on that, and we went through several different versions of the frame. The first prototype being extremely unsettling to look at. That was our first process of just trying to figure out the layout of a frame. It was very ugly to look at, I will admit. It was very wide, not a whole lot of clearance for a good sized camera. We eventually started dropping the plates, because the first version was like a school bus style frame. We split the mid plate to the bottom, creating more of a ideal space for larger cameras such as the 04, 03, etc., etc. And when we got to the arms were originally like this clover shape, because my first thought process is, let's save motors. Tired of breaking motors. We need to do something about that. A lot of the frames I've noticed lack space. There's probably a reason, but I was like, nah, we need to figure out how to counter that. Let's protect our motors. So I started with this clover shape idea. It looked cool at first, but after a while, it looked like a cat paw. It would just break super easily. So DroneArchy actually ended up reaching out, sending a screenshot of the Dirtbag FPV skull, which he thought would make a great shape for the ends of the arms. I hit up Spider. He's the captain of the Dirtbag FPV club, and I was like, hey man, do you think it'd be cool if we used the Dirtbag skull as the shape of the arms? Try to protect the motors. He was on board with it. At the time, the frame was called El Gordo because it was a chunky fat frame, but he wanted, since it was going to be associated with the Dirtbags, wanted it to be more kind of related to the Dirtbags, understandably. Me being El Gringo, I like to stick with the Spanish themed stuff. I thought it would be appropriate. So went into Google and typed in Dirtbag and see what popped up as the Spanish version, and Cabron popped up, which makes perfect sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that to begin with. El Cabron doesn't directly correlate to Dirtbag, but it's the equivalent in the Spanish term. It basically means the hated, the bastard, stuff like that. So we were like, fuck it, yeah, that sounds cool. Then on forward, we called it the El Cabron. We say it very white because it's just pain in the ass to be like El Cabron every single time. That's how the name came about. Spider's input was like, hey, if I'm going to be giving up the Pyrat, I wanted to have some of the features that the Pyrat has, because at the time, that was Spider's favorite frame. This is why we added the aluminum cage, which we come to find out that that's the most difficult part of the entire frame to get cut, is the aluminum, because you have to go through a company that can do both carbon and aluminum. We could technically source through 2 different companies, but after doing a lot of price checks and us trying to make this frame as affordable as possible, it was just not feasible. So we ended up finding a company that can do both and make it for a reasonable price, so that way it can be this durable, affordable frame. Another thing that Spider suggested was we need to drop. Originally, this This rear standoff was just going to be a single standoff, kind of like the Pyrat and the Vanny. Spider said, let's not do that.
No!
We need 2 standoff posts in the back. So we ended up changing the design to be 2 standoffs in the rear. So that way it's just not as much of a pain in the to deal with. I see the point, and we ran with the point. But after Spider was on board, we ended up getting the frames cut early June, or we had the frames cut early January through CNC Madness. No shade towards CNC Madness, but it was a nightmare having to deal with them. They took forever to respawn through the main lady. There's an inside joke between us. I'm not going to shout out any names because I don't want to shoot shades at any particular people. There was a lady that worked there and got everything wrong on the first run. There were some things that needed to be changed. Originally, they were trying to ship out with T300 carbon on everything. We were like, no, that's not going to fly. We said T700, and originally we were going to do T700 everything. But after talking to Damaged, we found out top plates don't have to be T700. It's very rare that you're going to break anything. It's just, so we went with T300 plates and T700 arms. But it was really hard explaining that to them, and they started cutting everything at T300, and that's another reason why I feel like the arms were so fragile at the beginning, is just because half of the arms were T300 and then half of them were T700, but it's hard to tell which one's which, because when I got the package, I fucked up on splitting the parts. They all got mixed together, and yeah, it was hard to tell the difference between the two. We even tried doing a weight factor, but we couldn't figure it out. Eventually, long story short, we used CNC Madness for the first 2 iterations of the drone frame, and then we went through a guy that Birdie has connections with to cut his frames, and it's going to be a lot cheaper in the long run, and that's the whole goal. We want to make this as affordable for people as much as possible, so that way you could fly, crash, and keep flying. I will admit, the beta frames that we are going to be coming out with is purely for testing, just to see what else other people can break. If it's mostly just arms, we already kind of resolved the arm issue. Spider and I have both been relentlessly putting the Cabron through the ringer, as well as my wife Venus. She's also been a beta tester. I say beta because this is technically the beta frame. And she's only broken 1 arm the entire time she's been flying, and she's had hers for about, I think, 2 months now. So 2 months, and her crashing and only broke 1 arm. That's fantastic. I've broken quite a few arms, but it's not like a super common thing. But it does happen. And it seems like when I broke my arms, it was in the dumbest way possible, whereas situations where it should have just annihilated the arms, I didn't have any issues with that. I think a big part of the arms is just the way the leverage is, which we think we fixed in the close to the final version of what's going to be fully released and produced probably for several batches. The current batch is only going to be a single batch. Like I said, this is mainly just to get the frame out there for other people to test and try to see what they think about the arms. But yeah, I wanted to make a short video, kind of bench pilot style, and see how it comes out. Who knows? Maybe this might be the new format of me making videos, if it's easier said than done. But yeah, so that's the short, sweet history of the Cabron. If you stuck around to the very end, type El Cabron 2026, and that way I know who's stayed till the end or not. I don't care. Do what you want to do. But yeah, this was a fun little side project, and if anybody has any questions about the Cabron, hit me up on Instagram or Discord, whatever, I don't care, if you have any other questions about it. But yeah, this is where I'm going to end it, and hopefully this one is a better audio, because I've done this like 3 times now trying to get this video out. So yeah, hopefully this works, and yeah, peace.